Hey everyone, and welcome back to the studio. Today we're going to walk through my process of painting the subtle color shifts that you find in peaches. This takes a gentle touch and some careful color mixing, but the effect can be really beautiful. Let's go! I'll start off by spreading a thin coat of liquid medium over the surface of my panel. This is a 6x6 inch gesso primed cradled panel that I toned with a thin wash of acrylic paint. With the panel prepped, I'll start to mix some color to use for the drawing stage. I like the combination of burnt umber and ivory black. These combine into a nice rich and semi-transparent dark. Using this mixture, I'll make the first marks on the panel. I like to find the outer edges of the object that I'm drawing: bottom, top, left, right, and a few other additional exterior points. This helps me place this peach nicely within the surface of the panel. Using these points as a reference, I'll start to draw the outer edge of the peach. I like to use a combination of straight-ish lines and angles to help give this round form some structure. I use the exact same method to draw the shape of the shadow being cast onto the surface of the table. I'll come back in with a paint eraser tool to lighten up some of the line work. Because this peach has a lot of bright, pure color in it, too much of that umber and black mixture will interfere and will make the painting process that much more difficult. I'll grab some burnt sienna, which is very transparent, and draw the shape of the dimple on the peach, and then I'll block that in. Before I get into mixing color, I'll block in the cast shadow with a combination of burnt umber and black. This helps ground the peach by showing it sitting on the table, and I like to keep this nice and thin by mixing some medium into it. The shape of the peach felt a little wonky to me, so I'll correct a few lines, then come back and erase the original ones. Now we'll get into mixing some color. This viewing angle only gives us a small sliver of shadow on the peach, but I like to establish that first. I want a nice, desaturated orange, so I'll mix a crazy combination of colors just to experiment. In here is some burnt sienna, ochre, burnt umber, raw umber, cadmium orange, and cadmium lemon. You'll even see I throw in some cadmium red to really warm it up as well. From here I'll block in the shadow side, modifying this mixture of paint to capture that nice warm to cool color transition that I see in the peach. More cad lemon and ochre to cool it down, more cad red, orange, and burnt sienna to warm it up. I also block in the shape of the shadow around the pit, warming up the deepest shadow with some cadmium red to show some glow. From here, I'll start to mix the first transitions up towards the light from this shadow. A touch of burnt sienna, cad red, cad orange, and a bit of alizarin will get that nice, rich red that you see. I'll bring this mixture right up against the shadow that I just blocked in. I'll continue lightening these combinations of paint and gradually increasing the saturation of color as I continue to work up and away from the shadow. The most important thing to keep in mind during this whole process is the concept of values. That is to say, you want to make sure each little step up towards the lightest part of this peach grows gradually lighter. If there are big, jarring jumps between values, if you get too light too fast, for instance, the surface will look blotchy, too angular, and just not three-dimensional. This is extra challenging when painting a color gradient like this, but it's an essential skill when it comes to capturing the soft, slightly fuzzy texture of this surface. Take your time and use a delicate but intentional approach, and you'll start to see the payoff right away. As the form wraps up and towards the light source, the peach itself happens to transition out of those rich reds and oranges and into more bright and cheery yellows. I'll simply start adding more lemon yellow, muted slightly with yellow ochre, to the existing mixtures of paints. Now, I don't want to go too far into the brightest, purest colors around the highlight without rendering the bottom right side of the peach first. I want as much information in the painting as I can get so that I have a good set of values to compare everything against. Again, keep those transitions nice and soft. Where the midtone meets the edge of the shadow, you'll notice that I gently combine those values together with a few extra brush strokes. A sense of softness is everything here. As I approach the lighter left side of the peach, you'll notice that I'm not quite using the same intensity of color. I'm leaning more on yellow ochre to sap some of the chroma from these yellows. This helps push the sense of form in this single object. The more intense the color in an area, the closer to your viewer that area will look. This bottom left edge is in the distance, as short as that distance might be, but you want to reinforce that to make this peach look and feel even more three-dimensional. A quick note about cadmiums as I continue painting here. In some unsuccessful paintings from the past, I've found that sometimes I depended too much on pure color, almost as if it were straight out of the tube. This is rarely the case in nature, I think, especially when it comes to natural gradients like this one. It's far better, in my opinion, to cut those pure colors. I often refer to this as tempering, with some of your earth tones. Burnt and raw umber, yellow ochre, and burnt sienna can all modify those unnatural-looking pure colors. This adds a sense of realism to your color mixes. Unadulterated reds, oranges, yellows, these can all be found in candy wrappers or plastic toys, but not so much in natural objects. Now that I have the information on the bottom side of the peach in place, I can confidently start to work towards the lightest, brightest parts on the top side. Again, you'll see I'm still mixing a few earth tones into things. I don't want something like pure lemon yellow here yet, for example, but I am increasing the amount of pure color that I'm using very gradually. For the absolute brightest parts, nearest the highlight, I'll stop pulling my punches when it comes to pure color. Right around that highlight area is a bright and vibrant yellow, so I'll mix some of the purest versions of that color yet. Notice here how there's nothing even close to this brightness and intensity on the bottom or right side of the peach. If you nail those transitions and reserve the brightest areas for around the highlight, the object you're painting is really going to pop off the canvas. I'll come back now and I'll paint the little bit of light that's being reflected up into the dimple of this peach. I'm being really careful to keep this light within the range of shadow values, however. It's visible, so you want it to be there, but because it's not receiving direct light, it needs to meld right into that larger shadow shape. You'll see I soften all of these shadow edges again to help the sense of turning form. A little touch of intense red right on the edge of that dimple shadow shape helps enhance the sense of glow as well. That's a fun little trick you can use. To show some of the wrinkles and folds in the surface of this peach, you'll see I come back in with some brighter color. The difference in value here, compared to the darker and desaturated surroundings, gives the illusion that parts of the peach are catching more light than others. At this point, I'm simply refining some of the smaller details. I'm jumping back and forth between lighter and darker midtones of various color temperatures, which I use to define the subtle transitions of those gentle folds and those wrinkles. I'm always softening edges too. Too many hard lines will just break the form. I'm feeling pretty happy with the peach at this point, so it's time to start painting some of the background. I want a nice, neutral, gray-green to kind of offset these reds and these oranges. I'll grab raw umber, ivory black, yellow ochre, and a little bit of titanium yellow to mix this background. Once I'm happy with it, I'll condense this pool of paint with my palette knife and start painting. You'll notice that I'm not afraid to bring this background right up to the edge of the peach. I do this carefully though, so I don't end up wrecking all the work I've already done. I'll come back in and I'll soften all those edges later. To further enhance the sense of contrast in this painting, I lighten the background mixture with some titanium yellow. I'll use this brighter version right up against the darkest side of the peach and right up against the cast shadow. Conversely, I want the background to darken as it moves up and away from the peach. I'll grab that original background mixture, then throw some raw umber and black into it to darken it slightly. With the background in place, it's time to paint that fuzz on the surface of the peach. This is my favorite part, but it can also be really challenging. You'll see I'm mixing some yellow ochre and white into my mixtures of that orangey yellow. This cools it down and desaturates it. That's the key to painting this portion. A quick test of this mixture tells me it's a little too dark, so I brighten it with more white, then bring it right up into that top left edge of the peach. I'll adjust it a touch brighter from time to time, but I'm using very careful brushwork to get a nice, soft edge. Because this form is turning and it's receiving different amounts of light, this fuzz will get darker as the peach wraps away from that highlight. I'll cool it down and darken it, primarily with raw umber and black, but you'll see I also throw a little alizarin in there too. That kind of pushes it to a really nice, dusty, almost purple. The brushwork that I'm using here is very, very gentle. I'm barely touching the surface of the panel with the bristles, and I'm letting this dusty gray kind of blend gently with the paint that's already on there. This, again, helps push the sense of softness. You want everything to blend together, but you don't want to mash things into a mess. These cool grays will show up pretty much anywhere the form of the peach turns away from the light source. What's happening, I think, is that the fuzz on the peach is catching its own light as it wraps around the surface of the form. Be judicial, however. If you throw a ton of gray all over the place, especially if it's too bright, you risk flattening the form. Pick and choose some areas, make sure the value is correct, keep it soft, and let your viewer kind of fill in the blanks. I noticed that the shadow on the bottom of the peach had a really hard edge, so I mixed a transitional value to soften that just a little bit more. I also softened the very bottom edge where the peach meets that cast shadow. I'll then start working my way around the peach, just adjusting a few things, softening edges, adding some brighter areas of fuzz, and rendering a few more small details. The bulk of the information is already established, but quick detail passes at the end help push the sense of realism and form that much more. I decide here to do another pass on the lightest parts of the fuzz. I'll brighten it up and introduce it even further towards the brightest areas into the body of the peach. Now this peach isn't shiny or reflective, so the true highlight is very diffused. I'll use the brightest version of this cool dust to define that lightest point. The last step is to soften the edge of the cast shadow. I'll mix a combination of black and raw umber to get a value in between the background and the heavy dark of that blocked in shadow shape. Using careful brushwork, I'll let that transitional value blend those two areas together, which will soften that shadow until it just melts into the background. And that's it. There you have it. This is the method I use to paint these soft, fuzzy things like peaches. There's a lot of information to distill down into very careful brush strokes, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be knocking these out of the park. Thank you as always for watching. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see me paint next, and I'll catch you next time.